Hello, this is Rachel with the Otago Prattville Public Library, and today I'm showing you all how to make pulled string art for the Friday Family Fun activity. You're going to want to get this kit out, and the items that you'll need from this kit are one piece of white cardstock, a cup, your set of paints, and 3 pieces of yarn. There's 2 of them. Let me get this third one out. Awesome, 3 pieces of yarn. I'm going to set my kit aside and we're ready to get started. Now, the first thing I wanted to let you all know is that you can use multiple cups for this if you have more disposable cups at home to speed the process up a little bit. So that's what I'll be doing. But you can also just rinse out your cup between each use, and that's a way to minimize plastic waste and also maximize the reused power of the supplies that we have here today. We are going to be creating a pattern on this paper, and then with our yarn and our paint, and kind of smushing it together by folding it in half and then pulling the string to create a really cool effect. So to kind of get everything ready for that, the first thing we're going to need to do is fold our paper in half. And you can do this in either direction. You can fold it so that it's in short halves or long skinny halves. It's totally up to you. I like the short, wider halves because it gives me a little bit more room for my string to wiggle around. The other supply you will need for this craft that is not provided is water. So I'm going to reach over here carefully and not spill all over and get my water. Because we are using washable paints and water and string, it's going to be a little bit messy. So I have my paper towels on hand. And it's also smart to wear an apron for this activity if you have one, or a t-shirt that you don't care for too much. So I'm going to start, like I said, I am kind of doing a shortcut and using multiple cups. So I'm going to take my cups out and pour a little bit, about 1/3 of a cup of water into each one. Now, the ratio of water to paint doesn't matter a whole lot. It is just going to determine how vivid your coloring is, but in the big scheme of things, it's going to look pretty cool no matter what. So I've got my water in here, and I have a little bit of leftover water in here, which is great because I'm going to try to get some of this paint out into there. Now, I realize that it's a little tricky getting paint out of these containers. It doesn't exactly like to just fall out into it. So if you have a stirring stick, a straw, or the end of a paintbrush, you can use that to scoop it out and get the paint into the water. You can also use a little bit of excess water to pour that over the top and have that a little bit. That didn't work out super well for mine. I think I have one of the older paints. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set that here for a second and grab a paintbrush and use the scooping method. Okay, so I'm back with my paintbrush, and I'm just going to use the plasticky end to put a bunch of this red paint into the water and mix it up. I want to get as much of this red paint as I can because I like very vivid, bright colors. You can do this in more pastel tones if you want. It's totally up to you. And remember, these paints are washable, but you do still want to be careful that you don't make too much of a mess in your home and you're being respectful of mom and dad's furniture and things like that. I'm even going to dip my little cup in there to try and get all the paint out. So here's my red cup. Oops, I put a drop on my paper already. That is a-okay. That's just going to add to the artistry of the final product. And as you can see, it didn't make too much of a difference in the paper since I wiped it up with my paper towel pretty quick. Okay. Now, I recommend that you do one layer at a time and let them kind of dry before you do the next layer. I'm going to do them a little bit more quickly than that, but you'll see what I'm doing. So instead of mixing all 3 water and paint solutions, I'm going to do them one at a time. So now that I have my red mixed, I'm going to take one piece of yarn and dip it in there. And I'm going to use the end of my paintbrush again to kind of make sure that it gets saturated, because at the beginning, the acrylic of the yarn kind of resists the liquid and doesn't want to submerge itself. So I'm kind of forcing it down with my paintbrush. Awesome. Before I take this bad boy out, because this is about to be the messy part, before I take this out, I'm going to make a whole layer of protection for the desk here so that you don't make too much of a mess. And you particularly want to be sure that this bottom area below where you'll be pulling the string out from is protected. So without any further ado, I'm going to put my paintbrush back and very carefully, oops, I dropped the tail of my yarn in the paint water, but that's okay. Now I just have a little bit of red paint on my fingers, but that's okay. So I'm going to lift this out of the cup carefully, and very quickly I'm going to position it over the paper and kind of just let it fall where it will. So here we go. Let's see where it goes. I'm going to go whoop. Awesome. So see how it's kind of a squiggle? That's perfect for this. So now we're going to fold our other side over and put your hand right over the top of it. Make sure you're pressing down super good. Pressing down with all your might. And then see this little bit down here, this little bit of string? We're going to pull on that. And 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Let's see what the results of that was. So when we open our paper back up again, we have this cool kind of watercolory, squiggly, vase, flowery looking thing, which I think is pretty neat. Now this paper is not super thick. If you have watercolor paper or other art supplies for doing a more professional version of this, you absolutely can kind of ramp this up a bit. But that's why I recommend we kind of let it sit and dry between each layer so that the paper doesn't start to peel and come apart due to the dampness. So we're going to let this dry for a moment. And while we're doing that, we can wipe off our paintbrush and mix up our yellow. So I'm going to close the red over a paper towel so I don't make too much of a mess, and open up my yellow and scoop the yellow paint into the water as well. Awesome, let's close that up. And I'm going to give it another really good stir. There's the yellow paint. I think because the yellow is so light, I'm gonna go ahead and let the string sit in the yellow paint a little bit longer. So I'm still gonna poke it in so that it's submerged partially. And I'm gonna try to leave a little dry end for me to grab later. If you have a clothespin or something like that, that might be a smart time to bring that out so that you can clothespin your dry ends to the side and not get your fingers all painty. And we'll let that sit and simmer for a little bit. And then once that is good and soaked and this is a little bit more dry, we'll just repeat the process. Now the different patterns of swirls that the different lengths of string are gonna make are gonna create kind of a bouquet look of abstract, colorful art. So that's gonna be really fun. While the yellow is soaking, because like I said, I need to speed this up a little bit, I'm gonna start making my blue. And I want the blue on mine to be the primary color, the real showstopper here. So I poured out some of my water and I just have a teeny bit of water in the bottom there, just about 2 centimeters covering the bottom of the cup. That way it's less diluted and more concentrated, and the color should be a little bit more vivid. You can absolutely play around with the ratios of water to paint. There's no right or wrong way to do this, so long as you're having fun and being creative. Try and get all this good blue pigment out of here. Awesome. And then clean up my area a little bit and give the blue a good stir as well. I got a little bit of paint on the side of my cup there, so I'm mixing it in with the water a little better. And again, because I want the blue to be very vivid, I'm going to let my string hang out in there for a couple minutes. I'm going to give it some time to kind of saturate or marinate. So I'm going to hold on to one end and use my paintbrush to poke the other end in. The string is a little bit longer, I think, than my other two. So that will also help the blue be more dominant in my design. Okay, cool. Let that sit and soak for a moment. And while that is doing that, I think I'm going to do my yellow. My paper's not quite dry yet, but another thing you can do to speed things along is get another piece of paper towel and very gently just set it on top and dab it. And that'll get rid of some of the excess moisture. So let's do our yellow. I'm going to put the string on the other side this time, just for fun. And I put it down very quickly. I'm going to fold it over, press, and pull. And voila! Now the yellow kind of mirrored the shape of the red, so we've got a little bit of orange going on there. I'm going to get rid of a little bit of this excess moisture. There we go. But really, it just adds a little bit of extra dimension to it. It's almost like a yellow shadow to the red part, which is kind of cool. And now let's see how vivid our blue is. I'm going to do the blue over here. And if it does a couple drops like this, that's totally okay too. That's all part of the fun. Cool. So I've got my squiggle on there. I've got my little bit of yarn sticking out from the bottom. Gonna smush it, pull it, set my string aside, and very gently open it up. You can see the water starting to seep through. I'm actually gonna dab the outside a little bit too, just to help with that moisture control. And then we'll open it up and see what we've got. That's pretty neat. So the blue is definitely the dominant color. I like how the spots kind of created kind of like a Rorschach test as well. And then you can see a little bit of red and that shadow of yellow as well. So I had fun doing this. I think if I did it again, I would use less water for all my colors and not just the blue. And I would use watercolor paper if I had it. You can also use multiple layers of paper to do this. So you could have one paper that you use on top, like this piece of cardstock, to pull the string every time, and then you can just have the other paper house the entire design, kind of like this, if you don't want something a little bit more symmetrical like this. Now I might play around with this with some markers or some crayons and see if I can turn, I kind of feel like I can see some seahorses in there. So I might turn this into a seahorse creation, but I would love to see what you guys make and what you guys can create from this. Thank you so much for creating along with me, and I hope you have a wonderful day.